a persuasive speech. You'll see this speech listed in the course syllabus as an actuation speech. Actuation is just a form of persuasive speech. Gosh, that's a tongue twister. In which you are asking someone to act or asking someone to complete a certain action. And so for this persuasive speech, you are going to be presenting on a topic of your choice, and your goal, your job as a presenter is to persuade us to act on something or to do something or to change a behavior or attitude. So let's talk about the assignment. So people are exposed to persuasive messages on a daily basis. In some instances, the goal of the sender is achieved, but in most cases, we reject the persuasive appeal outright, or we just simply aren't even aware of the fact that we're being persuaded. Think about it. How many of you have watched television today? How many of you have listened to the radio? You have been attempted to be persuaded by advertisement, right? Every advertisement you see is a persuasive appeal for you to buy that product. When you drive down the road and you see billboards, those are advertisements. Again, those are persuasive appeals to attempt to get you to purchase a product or a service. Now, in most cases, we see those and we don't think anything else about them, and we don't really, most likely we're not going to rush out and buy that product just off of that one appeal. But persuasion, because it is, the very act of persuasion is to change someone's beliefs or to get someone to do something, then it, by its very definition, is defined as having some measure of change in attitudes or belief. So you cannot persuade someone if your goal is not to change their attitudes or their beliefs. Now, it could be something small, like we need to go out tonight. If you're talking to your friends, hey, we've been busy, we've had a long semester, let's go out, let's have a little bit of fun. You are attempting to persuade them to change an attitude or change a behavior or to force a behavior. So we're exposed to persuasive messages all the time. And so for this speech, you are going to attempt to persuade us in either attitudes or behaviors. And because persuasion is a receiver-oriented type of study, our main concern is how people process and influence those persuasive messages. Are you successful in your attempts to persuade them? A few things to consider. You really have to really focus on the target audience, right? If you are going to be giving a speech in front of your classmates or to your classmates, as is the instance in this persuasive speech, then you need to be aware that who your target audience is. Mainly millennials, and millennials are targeted in very specific ways. Your viewpoints on things tend to be more socially liberal, and so you need to have an awareness of who that target audience is. Make sure that you present fact, not opinion, right? You should not say, well, I believe, or it's my opinion that. Now, it's perfectly fine for you to have an opinion and for you to believe something, but you need to present fact as presented by scientific evidence or research studies, scholarly information, and then provide bullet points and things for us to consider. So if we perceive something to be factually correct, it's much more likely to actually force us to have a change in attitudes and behaviors versus if we're just simply saying, well, my opinion is, or I believe that. Because we all have our opinions and we hold very true to those opinions. So you're not really going to get anyone to change their opinion unless you are actually presenting factual evidence and information. And because facts are so important, source credibility and source competence really plays an important part in these speeches. And that's why I've had you working on source credibility and working on oral citation of sources. It's one thing to say, the source says, or the newspaper says, or the scholarly article said, but it's another thing to actually give us a little bit of more detailed information, expand on that, right? Tell us why those sources are credible. The more credible we perceive a source to be, the more likely we are to believe that that information is factually correct and true and not just someone else's opinion. So you could say things instead of saying a medical study suggests that that people who smoke at least 3 cigarettes a day are likely to have a shortened lifespan of at least 10 years shorter than a non-smoker, someone who doesn't smoke three cigarettes a day. So you can say a recent medical study published in the New England Medical Journal, which is the third most highly rated medical journal there is, suggests that smokers who smoke at least 3 cigarettes a day are likely to live 10 years less than people who don't smoke, right? So source credibility is important, and that leads directly to trustworthiness. If we perceive something to be credible, we consider it to be trustworthy. If we don't consider it to be credible, then we're not going to trust the source, and your speech is not going to be successful. Also, think ahead. Look for fallacies, or what we call errors in reasoning. If something just doesn't make sense, then your audience is not likely to believe it to be true. And so look for those opportunities. Think about things from your audience's perspective and ask yourself, well, what is it that if I'm listening to this speech, what is it that my concern is going to be? What is it that, where are the weaknesses? Where are the fallacies? Where are the flaws here? And if you think about it from the other person's perspective, then you're much more likely to come up with counter arguments or just a good solid argument in general in